All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. I'm Ahead of the Curve, also known as James Bergman, and in today's book review, I will be discussing George Orwell's 1945 Animal Farm. Animal Farm could be defined as a few different things. Some people would say it's a novella, some people would say it's some sort of political reflection of the past, present and future, and some would even submit that it's a children's book. And I think that it can be all of those things. And that's why it's so interesting, because you can read it as a child, and really, really enjoy it. But then if you read it with more historical context and more political context, and especially under the pretense of which George Orwell was writing it under, the book has far more depth than one would first realise. George Orwell, also known as Eric Arthur Blair, was a journalist living in Britain. Is obviously well known for this piece, but also 1984, which I haven't yet reviewed on the channel. I read it a few years ago and I really want to recheck that out. So if you guys want to see me review that piece, then let me know in the comments section below. I have also reviewed one of Orwell's other books, actually, The Road to Wigan Pier, and that's a really, really good book. Hitchens was more or less a scholar of George Orwell. I think he's got a book called Why Orwell Matters. I'm yet to check that out. But Hitchens always said that Orwell's best work was actually his least popular. Because obviously, Animal Farm and 1984, some other pieces are very popular. But just because something's popular, that doesn't actually mean that it's perhaps the author's best work. I know when I read Road to Wigan Pier, I was really in awe of Orwell's polemical writing style and his observations living where he did and what he saw. I think that book is really, really good, but most people only read Animal Farm or 1984 or just both. But I'd highly recommend Road to Wigan Pier if you haven't already read that. For those of you who are unaware of what Animal Farm is actually about, it's a simple, tragic fable telling what happens when the animals drive out Mr. Jones and attempt to run the farm themselves, the animals. The idea of this piece, just to elaborate more on the premise, the animals have a sense of consciousness in this narrative, and at the beginning they talk about being under slavery, under being, quite literally in a farm and being exploited. They want to overthrow the humans who run the farm, and essentially they do. And then it's sort of a tale about how the animals fend for themselves, and essentially how the animals become just as bad as the perpetrators. Going on to what I personally picked up from the book, my observations, my thoughts. I really like this book. I've seen the animated film, I've read the book a few years ago, as I said. It's really, really short. It's an easy read. I read this in under 2 hours. It is a leisurely read, of course, because children can read it. And for that reason, again, that's just another reason why it is so good, because it's just so easy to read, so accessible. That's why it's become pretty much a legend in literature. Initially, when I read the first even few pages, I was really surprised, actually, how George Orwell, whether he realised it or not, was actually indirectly commenting on animal ethics. The animals were saying, look, they feel like slaves, as I mentioned before in the premise. They feel like slaves, and that they're being controlled, and they want to overthrow the perpetrators, the humans who are mandating all of this to happen. The cows being exploited, the chickens being exploited, the animals effectively living to serve the humans and then basically dying a very painful and it's often slow, which is to the contrary of what most people believe or like to believe. And so really it's just this awakening of a revolution in some sense. So in regard to this indirect commentary that Orwell was writing about, even on page 4, just the beginning of the piece, he wrote the following: "But is this simply part of the order of nature? Is it because this land of ours is so poor that it cannot afford a decent life to those who dwell upon it? No, comrades, 1,000 times no. Why do we then continue in this miserable condition? Because nearly the whole of the produce of our labour is stolen from us by human beings, their comrades, is the answer to all our problems. It is summed up in a single word: man. Man is the only real enemy we have. Remove man from the scene, and the root cause of hunger and overwork is abolished forever. I don't know if Orwell intended to have this commentary on how we treat animals, how we exploit animals for produce. I was reading this and I was like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Was Orwell intending to do that, or was this just part of the story? I don't know. Because I just read a book by Peter Singer on animal ethics, well, ethics in general, but animal ethics as part of it, I suppose, as well as me enjoying this subject, I wasn't even looking for this topic when I was reading the piece, but it just came upon me when I was reading it. And so, yeah, I mean, do you guys think he was purposely talking about animal ethics? Maybe not, but I think it's an interesting thing that this, as well as all the other things, political things, references, I think that it's even more interesting now that I know that there is some brief commentary on what we do to animals. So once the animals overthrow the humans and throw them off their farm, the animals then begin to sort of get in a hierarchy automatically, which I found especially interesting, considering that is the contrary of what the entire point of their revolution was. It was to overthrow authority. It was to overthrow inequality, and in a sense they succeeded, but at the same time sacrificed their, well, semi-comfort for another kind of comfort, but actually one that is, unbeknownst to them, maybe just as worse. And so the animals created a version of the 7 commandments, which they would put under the label of animalism. And these 7 commandments are as follows. Number 1, whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. Number 2, whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. Number 3, no animal shall wear clothes. Number 4, no animal shall sleep in a bed. Number 5, no animal shall drink alcohol. Number 6, no animal shall kill any other animal. Number 7, all animals are equal. What I think I find specifically interesting about these commandments, and not only is it a reference to the biblical commandments, with that aside, what's interesting is that throughout the story, the commandments are consequentially broken. They are exploited. They're rewritten over once the pigs realize and assert their authority over the other animals, because they have realized that, well, power, I guess. And it's interesting because many things are condemned throughout the story that the humans actually manifest. Things like paper, money, let's say, notes, and later on in the story, notes are used. It's the same thing with the blankets as well, like, oh, well, you can't sleep in a bed, but it's like, oh, we're just changing the wording around to mean that, oh, it's okay with a blanket, you're just not allowed sheets, you know? So throughout the piece, these commandments are being exploited and rewritten to show that, obviously, the pigs have taken control, and naturally the hierarchy has taken the lead, inevitably, you could say, because even with this story aside, even in a normal situation, in a workplace, let's say, like, some people are just going to take the lead more than others. Some people are going to have the personality traits to be more confident. Some people are going to be extroverted. Some are going to be introverted. And so this is kind of the natural order of humanity and animals, as it were. Although animals in this story actually have a consciousness, whereas, or not consciousness, but the ability to think and imagine and to formulate communication on a sophisticated level with each other. The level that the animals are doing this in Animal Farm are on the same level as portrayed with humans. So the entire point is that what I got from the book was the problem isn't humans necessarily. Because if it were humans, then why are the pigs turning into the humans at the end? The issue is the fact that they are conscious beings and that they have the ability to feel the same things as human beings, that the pigs can feel hatred, they can feel greed, or especially greed. They can feel jealousy. And so the issue really is human nature. And I know I said it isn't humans, because I think that's true to an extent. I only mean what's specific to the human mind. The mind itself is the enemy, not necessarily the human itself. And because the animals, the pigs, have the mind that humans do in real life, in Animal Farm, the issue isn't that they're pigs, it's more like they've got the same mind, the same motivations that human beings have themselves, that animals tend to not have in outside the realm of fiction. The issue is just self-awareness. The issue is what comes from self-awareness: greed, jealousy, hate, love. That's the issue. And that's the downfall of the pigs in this. Napoleon, the leader of them, he falls into the same tropes as any dictator would if they were given, full power and control over the masses, which is a lot harder to do under a democracy. I mean, the interesting thing as well is that he also had guards. Essentially, he had those dogs who would defend him. If not only if anyone tried to attack him, but if they tried to go against him in his propositions. In a way, Orwell wasn't even viewing Napoleon as an animal. He was just viewing it as a self-aware being. Like, I don't feel like Napoleon was ever a pig in Orwell's mind. He was just an infantile, self-aware creature who became more aware and therefore only fulfilled his obligations as somebody or something that was given power, and power corrupts indefinitely. One of my favourite passages in the book is at the very end, the very last few sentences. I'll read it out for you here. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. The pigs became what they hated. I mean, there is a quote, I became a criminal because I didn't want to be a victim. And I think in a sense you could relate that to Napoleon. What happens to people who are oppressed, who are resentful, is that they soon become the perpetrators. They soon become the people that they hated. And because they are inflated with this sense of, newfound power and hubris, excitement that they are not going to be kicked down anymore, once they have those attributes given to them on a silver platter, then they will make the most of it. And that's quite literally what Napoleon did once the farm was rid of humans. He took charge. He did what inevitably he would do as the most intelligent creature on the farm. Take charge. Be the dictator. And then, to probably not even his surprise eventually, or probably didn't even realise that he was in that position because he went too far by that point, but he was equivalent to man at the end. And I think it's got to be one of the most succinct and powerful endings to a piece. It's a very varied, wide-ranged book. It encapsulates so much within these 100 pages. It's great. I mean, it's the kind of book that any writer would dream. They would dream of writing. And for that reason, it deserves the title of being a classic, and George Orwell deserves all the credit that he gets for writing it. Although all I would say is that he's written many different books, and which I'm yet to check out for the most part, but I would recommend reading his non-fiction as well, if you're into politics in any regard. That's my Animal Farm review by George Orwell. I thought I'd give it a read. I read it, in not too much time at all, and I was just like, I've already reviewed George Orwell. I kind of want to review another book by him. Animal Farm isn't too long. So, I did enjoy reading this again, and I'll probably get to 1984 soon, but it's a lot bigger, so who knows. If you guys want to see 1984, if you're all begging for me to review that book, then I'll put it up on the to-do list. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching once again. Leave your thoughts on Animal Farm if you've read it, if you haven't. What are your thoughts on the piece overall? What do you think of my review? Albeit quite a brief one, but yeah. What do you think of Orwell? What do you think of Animal Farm? Let me know. Alright, guys. See ya.